The last transmission. A cry in the darkness. The research station on Valera 4 was dying. Dr. Mira Chen stood in the communications room, her fingers trembling as she adjusted the long-range transmitter one more time. Outside the reinforced windows, the sky glowed an unnatural orange. The Krell Empire's bombardment had turned the atmosphere itself into a weapon. Every few minutes, another explosion shook the ground, sending dust cascading from the ceiling tiles. Mira was 32 years old, a xenobiologist who had spent the last 4 years studying the native Valerans. They were a peaceful species, insect-like creatures with crystalline wings that sang when they moved. They built their cities in harmony with nature, never taking more than they needed. They had welcomed humanity with open arms when the research station was established. They had shared their knowledge, their culture, their friendship. Now they were being exterminated. The Krell Empire had arrived 3 weeks ago with a fleet of warships that blotted out the sun. They wanted Valera 4 for its mineral deposits, rare elements that could power their expanding war machine. The fact that 12 million Valerans lived here meant nothing to them. The Krell saw other species as obstacles or resources, nothing more. Mira had sent distress signals to every human colony within range. She had contacted the Galactic Council, begging for intervention. The responses had been the same. Too far away. Too dangerous. The Krell were too powerful to challenge. Everyone was sorry, but no one was coming. The research station had 43 humans. They had no weapons beyond a few small arms for wildlife defense. The Valerans had nothing at all. They were artists and philosophers, not warriors. Dr. Chen, a voice called from the doorway. It was James Okafor, the station's head of security. He was a big man, former military, but even he looked small now. We need to evacuate the lower levels. The shields won't hold much longer. Mira nodded without turning around. 5 more minutes. I need to finish this transmission. There's no point, James said gently. No one's coming, Mira. We need to focus on survival now. She finally looked at him, and he saw the tears on her face. They're killing the younglings, James. The Valerans brought their children to us for protection, and we can't protect them. We can't protect anyone. James crossed the room and put a hand on her shoulder. Outside, another explosion lit up the sky. We've done everything we could. Mira shook her head. No. There's one more thing. She turned back to the transmitter and opened a direct channel to Earth. It would take the signal 6 days to reach home at light speed. By then, everyone here would likely be dead. But she had to try. This is Dr. Mira Chen, Valera 4 Research Station, she said into the microphone. Her voice was steady now, clear and strong. I am sending this message to anyone who will listen. The Krell Empire is committing genocide. 12 million Valerans are being murdered for their planet's resources. The Galactic Council refuses to act. Every nearby power refuses to intervene. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Behind her, James listened in silence. I understand why. The Krell are strong. Fighting them means casualties and cost. It makes sense to stay away. But I need someone to know what's happening here. I need someone to know that the Valerans existed. That they mattered. That they were kind and beautiful and they deserved to live. Her voice cracked slightly. There are children in the shelter below me. Human children and Valeran younglings together. They're singing to keep each other calm. They don't understand why the sky is falling. They don't understand why no one will help them. She leaned closer to the microphone. If anyone is listening, if anyone cares, please remember us. Remember that we asked for help and the galaxy turned away. Remember that some things should matter more than power and politics and fear. Mira ended the transmission and shut down the equipment. There was no point wasting power now. James helped her to her feet. That was a good message, he said. Maybe someone will hear it someday. Maybe it'll make a difference. Maybe, Mira said, though she didn't believe it. They walked together down the corridor toward the shelters. Other researchers hurried past, carrying supplies and helping the wounded. Everyone moved with the quiet efficiency of people who knew they were out of time. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the station's medical officer, was treating a Valeran who had been caught in a collapsed building. The creature's wings were shattered, its crystalline structure cracked and bleeding. Sarah worked with desperate focus, but they both knew it was hopeless. How much longer? Mira asked quietly. Sarah didn't look up. The Krell commander sent another message. He's giving us 2 hours to surrender the station and all Valeran refugees. If we comply, he says he'll let the humans leave alive. And if we don't? James asked. Then they'll crack this facility like an egg and kill everyone inside, Sarah said flatly. Mira felt ice in her stomach. She looked around at the faces of her team. These were scientists and support staff. They were good people who had come here to learn and discover. They had families back on Earth. They had futures that were being stolen from them. We can't give them up, she said. The Valerans trusted us. James met her eyes. I know. But we need to vote. Everyone needs to choose. They gathered the entire station staff in the main shelter. 43 humans sat in a circle, with hundreds of Valerans pressed against the walls, watching with their large multifaceted eyes. Mira explained the situation simply. Surrender the Valerans and live. Refuse and die together. The vote was unanimous. Not one person chose survival over honor. When the Krell commander's deadline passed with no response, the bombardment intensified. The shields flickered and failed. The station's walls began to crack. Mira held a Valeran youngling in her arms as the ceiling started to collapse. She thought about Earth, about her parents, about the ocean she would never see again. She thought about the message she had sent into the void, and she hoped that somewhere, somehow, someone good had heard it. She closed her eyes and waited for the end. But the end didn't come. Instead, there was a sound like thunder. A sound like the universe itself splitting open. Myra's eyes snapped open. Through the cracked walls of the station, she could see the sky. And the sky was full of ships. Not Krell ships. These were different. Sleeker, smaller, marked with symbols she recognized. Human symbols. The insignia of the Terran Defense Fleet. James stood at the window, his mouth open in shock. That's impossible, he whispered. They couldn't have gotten here so fast. My message was sent 6 days ago. Even at maximum speed, Earth is 3 weeks away. But the ships were real. Hundreds of them, appearing from faster-than-light jumps in perfect formation. And as Mira watched, they opened fire on the Krell fleet with everything they had. The battle for Valera 4 had begun, and against all logic, against all odds, humanity had arrived to fight. The Admiral's gamble. An impossible decision. 6 days earlier, Admiral Marcus Rivera had been sitting in his office on the orbital command station above Earth when the message arrived. He was 58 years old, a veteran of the border conflicts and the Mars Rebellion. He had seen combat, made hard decisions, and lost people he cared about. He thought he was prepared for anything. Then he listened to Dr. Mira Chen's transmission, and he realized he wasn't prepared at all. Marcus played the recording 3 times. Each time, the words hit him like a physical blow. The fear in Chen's voice. The resignation. The desperate hope that someone, somewhere, might care enough to remember. His aide, Commander Lisa Park, stood at attention nearby. She had heard the transmission too. Her face was carefully neutral, but Marcus knew her well enough to see the anger in her eyes. "Get me Captain Torres," Marcus said quietly. "And Admiral Okoye. And General Chen. I want senior staff in the war room in 30 minutes. Lisa hesitated. Sir, you know what they'll say. Valera 4 is 3 weeks away at maximum speed. The Krell have a fleet presence there. Any response would require. I know what it would require, Marcus cut her off. Get them anyway. The war room was a circular chamber deep inside the station, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every human ship and station in known space. By the time Marcus arrived, the senior staff was already gathered. They all knew something serious was happening. Admiral Janet Okoye was the first to speak. She was older than Marcus, sharp-eyed and brilliant, one of the architects of Earth's modern fleet. I've reviewed the transmission, she said without preamble. It's a tragedy. But I assume you're not calling us here just to mourn. Marcus activated the central display, showing the location of Valera 4 and the estimated position of the Krell fleet. I want to mount a rescue operation. The room went silent. Then Captain Eduardo Torres, the youngest of the senior staff, laughed bitterly. A rescue operation. 3 weeks away. Against a Krell fleet. With what forces, exactly? We have the 3rd and 7th battle groups available, Marcus said. That's 200 ships. We could, 200 ships against a Krell occupation force. General Wei Chen interrupted. He was Army, not Navy, but he understood strategic realities. Admiral Rivera, the Krell brought enough firepower to subdue an entire planet. We'd be outgunned even if we stripped every defense from Earth itself. The 3rd and 7th are our reserve fleets, Admiral Okoye added. If we send them across the galaxy and they're destroyed, Earth is vulnerable. The Krell aren't our only potential enemy. Marcus looked around the table. These were good people, smart people. They were right about the risks. Every tactical analysis said the same thing. Going to Valera 4 was suicide. I know the odds, he said quietly. I know what we'd be risking. But I need you to understand something. That transmission came from one of our people. Dr. Chen and her team are human citizens. They're dying, and they asked us for help. They asked everyone for help, Torres pointed out. The Galactic Council. The nearby systems. Everyone said no because everyone recognized the reality. The Krell are too strong. So we should be like everyone else. Marcus felt his temper rising. We should make the smart calculation and let our people die. Okoye leaned forward. Marcus, I understand what you're feeling. But you're letting emotion cloud your judgment. We have responsibilities beyond any single research station. We have to think about Earth, about all of humanity. I am thinking about humanity, Marcus said. I'm thinking about what kind of species we want to be. Do we only help when it's convenient? Do we only stand up for what's right when the cost is low? General Chen shook his head. This isn't about right and wrong. It's about survival. We're still a young species in galactic terms. We can't afford to throw away our military capacity on a gesture. A gesture? Marcus stood up, his voice hardening. There are 43 humans dying on that station. There are 12 million Valerans being exterminated. You want to call saving them a gesture? The argument went on for hours. Every senior officer had the same objections. The distance was too great. The enemy was too strong. The risk to Earth was too high. Marcus understood their logic. He even agreed with parts of it. But every time he closed his eyes, he heard Dr. Chen's voice. He saw the image of children singing in a shelter while the sky fell. Finally, as dawn broke over Earth below them, Admiral Okoye made her final argument. Marcus, she said, and her voice was gentle now. You're a good man. That's why this is tearing you apart. But leadership means making impossible choices. It means accepting that we can't save everyone. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked up at her. Janet, do you remember the first contact doctrine? The document we wrote when we joined the galactic community? She frowned. Of course. We agreed to respect sovereignty, avoid military aggression, seek peaceful solutions. The last line, Marcus interrupted. Do you remember the last line? Okoye recited it from memory. Humanity will strive to be a force for good in the galaxy, acting with courage and compassion even when such action requires sacrifice. Even when it requires sacrifice, Marcus repeated. We didn't write that as decoration. We wrote it because we believed it. Because we wanted to be better than the empires that came before us. He stood and walked to the window, looking down at the blue and green planet below. My grandfather fought in the Unity Wars, he said quietly. He told me once that the worst thing humans ever did was learn to calculate the value of a life. To say this person matters and this person doesn't based on politics or profit or power. He turned back to face them. The galaxy has already made its calculations. They've decided the Valerans don't matter. They've decided our researchers don't matter. They've decided that the smart move is to do nothing. I'm saying we should be different. I'm saying humanity should be the species that shows up when no one else will. Captain Torres spoke up. Admiral, even if we agreed, the logistics are impossible. 3 weeks travel time means Dr. Chen and her team will be dead before we arrive. Marcus nodded. That's true if we use standard jump drives. But what if we don't? The room went very still. Commander Park's eyes widened. Sir, you can't mean. The experimental fold drive, Marcus said. The one Dr. Yuki Tanaka has been developing. General Chen stood up sharply. That technology is untested. We've only run simulations. No one knows if it will work on a fleet-wide scale, and even if it does, the power requirements would drain our reserves for months. But if it works, Marcus said, we could reach Valera 4 in 6 days instead of 3 weeks. We could arrive before it's too late. Admiral Okoye was staring at him. You're serious. You actually want to risk our entire reserve fleet on an untested technology to save a research station? No, Marcus said. I want to risk it to save our humanity. Because if we don't try, if we make the same cold calculation as everyone else, then what's the point? Why did we reach for the stars if we're going to act just like every other empire out there? The silence stretched out. Marcus could see the internal struggle on every face. They were military officers. They were trained to think strategically, to weigh costs and benefits. What he was proposing went against everything they had been taught. Finally, Admiral Okoye spoke. If we do this, if we commit our forces, there's no guarantee we'll succeed. We could lose everything and accomplish nothing. I know, Marcus said. But we'll know we tried. And maybe that matters more than we think. Another long silence. Then Captain Torres surprised everyone by speaking. My daughter is 7 years old, he said quietly. Sometimes she asks me what I do, why I'm away so much. I tell her I protect people. I tell her that's what humans do. We look out for each other. He looked at Marcus. If I go home and tell her we left our people to die because it was too risky to help, what does that teach her about who we are? General Chen sighed heavily. This is insane. Absolutely insane. He paused. But maybe insane is what the galaxy needs right now. One by one, the senior staff voiced their support. It wasn't unanimous. There were still objections, still concerns. But there was also something else. Something that had been missing from too many military decisions. There was hope. Admiral Okoye was the last to speak. Marcus, if this fails, they'll court-martial you. They might court-martial all of us. Marcus smiled grimly. Then we better make sure it doesn't fail. 6 hours later, the 3rd and 7th battle groups began their preparation. Dr. Tanaka, a brilliant but eccentric physicist, was pulled from her laboratory and told she had 12 hours to make her full drive work on a fleet-wide scale. She didn't ask why. She just got to work. The crews were told they were going on a rescue mission deep into hostile territory. They were told the odds were against them. They were told they could refuse without penalty. Not a single person refused. As the fleet prepared to jump, Marcus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the carrier Indomitable. He thought about Dr. Chen waiting to die. He thought about his own daughter, about the future he wanted for her. He thought about what it meant to be human. All ships report ready, Commander Park said. Full drive charging to full power. Marcus took a deep breath. Send a message to Valera 4 on all frequencies. Tell them help is coming. Tell them to hold on. The full drive engaged. Space twisted around them, folding in ways that defied conventional physics. The fleet vanished from Earth orbit, traveling faster than anyone had thought possible. They were racing against time, against logic, against every calculated risk. But they were racing. And sometimes, Marcus thought, that's what mattered most. Not whether you could win, but whether you were willing to try. The message reached Valera 4 90 minutes before the Krell's final assault. In the research station's shelter, as the walls cracked and the ceiling began to fall, Dr. Mirachin heard three words that changed everything. Help is coming.